Steve is a senior data center solution architect and a 21-year veteran at Sayers. He advises our largest enterprise customers on all aspects of IT infrastructure. Steve specializes in architecting, building, and supporting highly complex and available infrastructure solutions for the data center, such as servers, storage, virtualization, and hyperconverged platforms. And notably, when he's not in front of the keyboard, he's probably either running a marathon or a triathlon, coaching swim, cross country, track, doing something outdoors. Big outdoors guy, for those of you that don't know him. So, Steve?
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for joining. So I'm going to wrap up this today, and we're going to talk about storage. But what type of storage we're going to talk about? Well, let's talk about object storage and what we can utilize it for. So we are going to objectify your storage. Now, some of you might know, but what is object storage? And AKA, we've all called it the bucket. Object storage, if not many know, has started actually in the 1990s as just a large place to hold large volumes and unstructured data. It can hold many types of media, small objects to the human readable files and media. The great thing about object storage is it's stored with the extensible metadata that makes it highly searchable. So normal files, have a limited number of what you can put on the data on top of it to make it searchable. Normally it's when, how it's being accessed, and that's it, like really dates and accessibility. You can put a lot more of that metadata around the objects in object storage to make it easily searchable. So when you start talking about audits or stuff like that, when you need that data quickly returned to, object storage is the way to go. And also with object storage compared to file and block, you can grow to multiple petabytes in size with no restrictions on the geography. So let's talk about the leading object storage use cases right now. One of them is your backup target. A lot of customers are looking at this to not only just maybe replacing a target or offloading the long-term backup. So if you have an appliance-driven right now dedupe application for your backup environment, and most customers stay around 2 to 3 months on that backup target, you can now utilize object storage and offload probably 2 or more months off of that primary backup target. And now that's going to reduce that high expensive footprint and the maintenance cost on that dedupe application. And now you can offload it to an object storage where it's cheap and deep. And obviously we can go on-prem or cloud with it. And there are some vendors that are actually utilizing object storage as the primary target. Now that object storage has a little bit of flash built into it as well. S3, as I mentioned, object storage came out in the 1990s, just for data archiving, large media sets. Amazon really set the standard when they developed S3, and now that has pioneered the way for additional object cases being used. Even currently right now, there are data-driven appliances and applications that their native language is S3. So this is going to be taking more advantage of that object storage. Splunk Smart Store, Splunk Hadoop, but Splunk really developed their own instance, which is called Smart Store, which helps reduce that storage requirement for your aged data. So this is your cold, your warm, and even your frozen data. You can offset on those indexers and put it onto an object storage. And you can still do quick recovery of that data as well. But this helps lower your licensing and footprint of your Splunk environment and just keep it on the compute cycles you need and not the additional storage growth that comes with it. File sync and share, global remote access. So, this is going to be, places like Box, Dropbox, or if you have a hybrid solution, object storage can now start to look at replacing that and putting it into either an on-prem or cloud-based, more secured solution where it's under your company's policies. NAS file serve also with home directories. So as I mentioned, all All-flash object storage is coming out more and more available. More enterprises are taking care of use of that. With that adoption taking place, customers are starting to see that they can actually off-spin their NAS environment onto object storage. So better using that case for object storage. Remember, object storage, petabytes. There are customers that can have 65, 70 petabytes of object storage. So there's utilization for multiple instances for that, just not for a single siloed case. And these are just some of the examples. This is from MIT, actually. Just the multiple uses of object storage. You know, as I said, to the traditional, when it came out, archiving compliance, data backup and recovery. And now we're seeing the transition with more and more AI, more and more of using that S3 native language. You're seeing that the file services, ransomware protection is great. A lot of the backup solution vendors are using immutable data, using the object storage as immutable data for those ransomware protections. Cloud storage and data lakes. You know, obviously big data is a big part of this. Meta-rich, metadata enrichment, and then that cloud app development. And the next question is, are you ready for the data tsunami? So, according to IDC, in 2025, the global data sphere will be around 175 zettabytes. 90 zettabytes of this data will be just from IoT devices alone. You know, IoT is taking over. It's growing rapidly. Right now, I think we're around 59 to 60 zettabytes currently globally. And as IDC puts it, 80% of the worldwide data will be unstructured by 2025. So where's that data going to go? Object storage. That's where you're going to put it, most of it. Also, most organizations, they're stating, will see a data growth swell in the next 2 years. Where's that data going to grow? If you see most of the charts out there, it's heavily going to be unstructured, just because of all this new machine-driven information just pouring in. You know, you look at all the cars, more and more cars are now going to go electric. Well, with those electric is going to be more and more computes to look at everything going on, pushing terabytes of data. All the manufacturing start pushing more and more data into better how they utilize the machines and get better production. And right now, object storage is the most effective technology when you start applying those data analytics, machine learning, and the AI to the vast data stores. And when you want to pull that information and collaborate it, the object storage is going to be the quickest way to do that. So let's talk a little bit about emerging storage uses. So as I mentioned, data lakes for streaming data. Those are going to be your system events, your logs, sensor readings, application telemetry, and now social media and online interactions. A lot of customers are now looking to see how's that social media coming in, how's the online stuff going, and they can start blending that data with other data that built in. Even there are some vendors that allow to do structured and unstructured blending to really put out a good broad view of exactly what's going on at your company and how to really transition to get ahead of the curve. Big data analytics for storage. Spark, Flink, Hive are a couple of them. You know, these things are generating huge amounts of data, and it's just going to keep compounding. So where are you going to install that? You're going to install it on something that's going to grow easily. As I mentioned, the machine and deep learning training and data input streams. All of that machine data coming in, all of the deep life sciences, that's all going to be going onto that unstructured data stream. Repositories. So, you know, obviously everyone searches for everything on search engines. Well, what do they use? They use object storage. And then deeper involvement with that software development, source code management. Because object storage does a lot of versioning, so software development and source code management is perfect for that, because when you just do another version, it saves the old version and you have another duplicate copy. You don't need to back it up. You don't need to shadow copy it or anything. So it's already built into the object storage. And then issue tracking documentation. More and more with the all flash object storage, we're seeing now rich media streaming, the ability to really recall that data quickly and able to do live streaming of it. And then I think Bob hinted it a little bit about the container based. So containers are definitely heavily utilized in being one of the futures. It is a persistent data store for those containers, and then obviously cloud native apps are going to take direct effect for that object storage because of that S3 compliant that Amazon written so long ago. So what are some critical features for object storage when you're trying to figure out which one's good for you? You know, there's plenty of object storage vendors out there. Which one's going to be the best for you? So here are a couple things to really help you nail it down. So the scalability. What are your needs? You know, do you have small terabytes or are you looking for multi-petabytes? So the scalability is a huge part of it. And there are object storages that are better at one thing than the other for scaling. Some start at a very high scale, already in the petabyte range for good use cases. Others, you know, when we start looking at a software version, good for those smaller terabytes. Data protection. As I mentioned, object storage does not need to be backed up. That's why you put your backups on it. So it uses erasure coding and that multiple data copies to ensure the fact that your data is protected. Also, a lot of them double checks the data. So it will go and verify data during, you know, non-peak hours. And if it finds a corrupted data, it discovers it, removes it, and makes sure there's a valid copy. As I mentioned for auditing earlier, searching, indexing, the metadata is the big piece of this. The quicker retrieve of your data, either if it's in the cloud or on-prem, it's a highly valuable option. You know, I've heard it for, you know, I've been working in IT for 25 years. I've heard it from my customers. Auditing takes 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks. There are systems in place that actually leverage object storage and interlay a layer on top of object storage that can return those audits from weeks to hours. Performance. As I mentioned, all flash is now becoming more of a standard on the object storage, at least at the node ends. And then you have the cheaper storage behind it. With that, we're able to handle these multiple stream and individual requests coming in. You know, you're talking, some of them can handle 20 terabytes per hour. So that's a big feat. You know, you're still not going to hit that low latency, but for the read and response you need from, you know, an unstructured data source, object storage is definitely coming to the forefront. Security, big key things are multi-tenancy, you know, involved in your own LDAP Active Directory. And then obviously, where is your data when it's in flight or data at rest, encryption. A lot of the object storage are nailed all these on the head. They have it well documented and well in place. So big security risks, obviously, for in-flight data. So it's most of them will have the encryption built in flight, and then obviously when it gets landed, data at rest. Compliance and auditing. As I mentioned, the versioning of data, this helps with that. The object locking in the worm for that immutable data that you need. Deployment methods. Hit on this a little bit. Software only. You know, software, take it as a virtual. Good for very small deployments when you need like probably under 100 terabytes and you have some DAS in your environment you can utilize for this. I wouldn't really recommend some block storage because it's expensive. So why bother to put it on it when it can handle its own erasure coding on the back end? Hardware appliance. A lot of the vendors offer this. So these can scale from, you know, a couple 40 terabytes to 69. Some of them are hitting 100 petabytes right now. And then obviously the public cloud, where the world is your oyster. It can be anywhere you want it to be. But there is a cost involved in that as well. The multi-protocols and supports and standards. You know, as they started out, the big things was S3 and Swift. Now we've wrapped up into the HTTPS and REST APIs. And now with the NAS environment coming more into the full swing, now you're seeing NFS and SMB part of the protocol options for object storage. And then really TCO. You know, the biggest thing about object storage, especially when we look at on-prem, is going to be the cost of hardware. The cost of the licensing. The hardware is normally cheap commodity disks. It's the software licensing that's going to be extremely expensive when you start looking at that on-prem option. So where should you deploy your object storage? You know, there are two good options. The cloud, where is going to be your OpEx, or on-prem, where you're going to be looking at the CapEx model. So why would you do the cloud? Well, easy accessible, right? Good other fact is there's no life cycle. Come 5-7 years, you know, granted, yeah, most object storage can be done non-destructively. However, there's still a cost involved when you swap out that hardware. So with the cloud, you don't have that problem. Most of the clouds, 11.9's availability, you know, that's pretty high. It's really good. No, not many can hit that. Could be less expensive when you start talking about resiliency. And when I talk resiliency, you have that global multiple copies. So when you start looking at on-prem, well, if you have 15 petabytes in one location and you want to secure it in DR, you need 15 petabytes in the other location. Well, that's double it right there. Where cloud, they're going to spread your data over multiple data centers. And that ability kind of takes care of the resiliency. So depending on your resiliency, cloud could definitely be a better option. And obviously one of the big things about cloud, well, where's most of your workload? Where's those application data-driven AI machine learning happening right now? Probably happening in the cloud. So if it is, it's a better environment to put your object storage in right now. So why on-prem? Well, we have customers that cloud is not really an option. They're telco, governments, utilities. They don't have that outside availability. They are locked down in a network environment, heavily firewalled. So an on-prem is their option. Also, cloud egress fees. You know, when you start recalling that data, yeah, it's free to put it up there. But when you start calling it back down, that's going to be a big problem. So when you start pulling down a lot of data, it becomes with those egress fees. Performance. If you need guaranteed performance for what you need, on-prem is a better solution. Just because of the near site to your own data center, the SSDs in place, performance is needed on-prem because you're just not guaranteed the performance 100% time when you're in the cloud. Security and compliance reasons. You know, certain aspects of your company that has to be done, like I said, sometimes governments and stuff, has to be on-prem. And then honestly, if you need more control of your infrastructure, you're going to go on-prem. You know, cloud, you don't have control of what's on it, or who, if you're sharing it with someone else. So those are some of the topics of how you do on-prem versus cloud, or cloud versus on-prem. That is mostly everything I got for you guys. I know we're very close on time, so please feel free to reach out to me. I think my information is available, and I'd love to discuss with anyone more on object storage and better use cases to move in your customer environment.